So it's great to be here. I think I'm ready. I got my selfie backstage. Congrats to Aaron. It's an amazing event. And thanks to everybody for coming out. It's crazy weather. I can't believe the day we're getting. So let's get into it. What's left to do? What kind of problems will I get to solve? And why aren't you guys done already? Those are the questions I asked 4 years ago when I interviewed at Audible. And the reason I asked those questions was at the time the company was 16 years old. I thought, you know, it's an audiobook company. Surely they've solved all the problems. Maybe I'm late to the party. And this is going to sound wrong, but stay with me. I'm happy to say in that time there's been plenty of problems over the last 4 years, but we've had a ton of fun solving them and lots of new creativity and new challenges that we've met along the way. A quick disclaimer, Gary Vee was talking earlier about self-awareness, and I am painfully aware that I am not a public speaker, so bear with me. We're going to try to get through this. I lead the core engineering team at Audible. It's an amazing team. You'll see a lot of them out here. Make some noise. I feel strange saying that. I'm very white to be saying make some noise. So the core engineering team, what we do is we build the core components, the services, the APIs that power Audible's experience on all of our surfaces. It's an awesome team, and what it also means is I know where all the skeletons are buried. So I'm going to share a couple of secrets and a couple of sort of stories with you that we've had along the way. So turning 20 in the digital age, that's what sort of the concept for this talk was. And I feel weird. We're listed as corporate innovation. I got to say, working for Audible, it does not feel corporate in any way. I've worked in corporate up and down Wall Street for 15 years, and it's not a corporate environment. It feels very much like a startup despite being 20 years old. But let me give you some context. So Audible, for those that don't know about us, we are a small little audiobook company that just so happens to be the largest provider and producer of audio and spoken word content in the world. So we're based just down the street in Newark, New Jersey. It's literally down the street. You just go down 280, turn left at the first traffic light, and you're there. We also just recently opened up in Exchange Place, and you can literally just turn to the right, my left, and you'll see our latest office. So we work with big name actors like Susan Sarandon, Dustin Hoffman. We just had Scarlett Johansson read Alice in Wonderland for us, and her sister did the audio production on that title. We also have the largest catalog of spoken word content with huge titles like The Martian, Harry Potter, as well as shorter content, and I don't think I can curse, but Gary Vee seemed to be fairly loose with it. But one of my favorite titles, it's actually a self-help title aimed at parents, and it's called Go the Fuck to Sleep. That title, we find, it's in the micro genre of desperate parents of newborn babies, and we find that sales of that title tend to spike around 1 a.m., 2 a.m. Eastern time, pretty much regular every day. Not only that, but we're also moving into original programming and short-form content. We just launched our channels product this year, and we hired Eric Newsom. He joined the team. He's one of the leaders in original content, and you're going to hear more about that in the coming months. In 2008, we were acquired by another small little book company that you would have heard of. It's named Amazon. And over the last 8 years, we've moved all of our technology, all of our systems over to that ecosystem. So 20 years old, how do we keep invention and innovation going in that environment? And you got to go back to the beginning. Invention has always been part of the DNA of Audible. If you think about 1995, and hands up anyone who remembers 95, it's a little bit of a blur to me. There was lots of college stuff going on. But back then, there weren't too many MP3 players. There was no audio marketplace. So Audible had amazing content, and they said, screw this. We're going to build our own hardware device. And that's the first thing they did. That device, it had 512 megabytes of flash storage, so it was not cheap. Everyone remembers how expensive storage was back in the 90s. And it's now sitting in the Smithsonian in Washington. I think it's next to Fonzie's jacket and just to the right of some ruby red slippers or something like that. In addition to the player, We also built our own DRM scheme and content delivery system. And again, there was nothing suitable back in those days that would suit long-form audio content that was 200 or 300 megabytes in size. Not only that, it's not enough to have great content, but you've got to get it to where your customers are listening. And if you remember, there was so many devices back then. We partnered with folks like Creative Zen. Anybody remember the Creative Zen MP3 player? Okay, one person. How about the Microsoft Zune? Any Zune? Yes, I still have one. It works great. And the Arcos jukebox. That's really testing the. Okay, all right. Andrew has a jukebox. So the way we integrated with these companies was we developed an SDK. Because we had our own DRM scheme, it was proprietary to us. We had to build the playback mechanism and provide that to third parties and OEMs, and they built that into their device. That was a great solution. It worked fantastic for many, many years, but it started to hinder our growth. It started to hinder the innovation that we could bring to bear in the market. Those were all good solutions, the content delivery system, the DRM scheme, the player, but technology moves fast and we have to keep up. As part of the Amazon acquisition, we gained access to the Kindle catalog. The Kindle catalog is an enormous library of ebooks. And one of the innovations we were able to bring to bear is something we call WhisperSync. WhisperSync is a technology that maintains your position across listening sessions. If you consider an audiobook, it's typically 12 to maybe 15 hours in length. You can't listen, although some of our customers do, you can't listen to that generally in one session. So WhisperSync keeps your position. If you start listening on your iOS or your Android phone and you continue on, say, the desktop or your Fire tablet, it'll maintain that position for you. The other thing it does, and this is really cool, is if you have the ebook of a title, let's say you're sitting on your couch and you're reading, on your ebook reader, let's say Kindle for argument's sake, and then you jump in your car, you can press play on the Audible app and continue listening where you stopped reading. So that's really, really cool, and that's transformational, basically, because if you think about that, now you're taking the experience, and it's not limited to a single surface. It's not limited to an individual application. And the customer can continue the experience independent of what they're doing in their life. We're basically gaining back time that would otherwise be lost for those customers. Now, again, part of the public speaking thing, I was told it's common or it's a good practice to quote somebody famous. I think that's just one of those logical fallacies, I think, argument from authority, but I'm going to do it. So I believe it was Gordon Sumner, 1951 to present, better known as his stage name Sting, who said, "Free, free, set them free." And I think he was talking about his application programming interface when he said that, when he wrote those words. And that's exactly what we did. We took our API, which had been closed, and we opened it up. We converted it into microservices, made it a RESTful API, and moved towards open standards. The other thing we did in the last few years is we took our enormous catalog and made it available for streaming. Again, moving away from proprietary technology and moving towards open standards. Last thing we did was we wrote amazing documentation, AWS-style documentation using the documentation toolchain from Amazon, and then we turned it loose on the community, and we sort of dog-fooded it to see what would people come up with. And the first time we did this was 2014. That was when we held our first company-wide hackathon. Now, besides all the technical challenges that I just listed out, moving to the RESTful API, there was also some organizational challenges. Hacking was not part of Audible's culture at that time. But it didn't take long, and our people really, really took to it pretty quickly. One of the acid tests of that platform was when a team at Amazon reached out to me probably 2 years ago. And it's not uncommon at Amazon to have secret teams. I'm sure you've all kind of heard of how Amazon operates. So this team reached out and they said, "Hey, Francis," because that's how teams reach out to me. "We're working on something. We can't tell you what it is, but we want Audible to be a part of it, and we need access to your content." So I did what any normal person would do. I said, "Okay, tell me what it is." And they said no. I said, tell me what it is. Come on, tell me what it is. They said, no, we're not telling. That went on for maybe an hour or two. And then finally, I gave them access to the API, and I gave them some sample code and some documentation, and off they went. I heard back from that team 2 weeks later, and they said, thanks so much. We won our hackathon event based on your API, based on integrating Audible. And I still didn't know what the darn project was. Come to find out, maybe a month later, I got disclosed on the project. That was the first team working on the Amazon Echo. It was a team from Lab 126 in Cupertino. And Audible, fast forward to 2015, last summer, we launched on the Amazon Echo. And now you can say, Alexa, play my audiobook, and she picks up right where you left off, complete with Whisper Sync. So you can switch between surfaces, and it's all powered by that API. And really, it's powered by the idea of turning our content and making it available, turning it loose to the world. So funny thing kind of happened. We realized, and this is a kind of an aha moment, but not really. What we realized was if you take creative people, smart creative people, and you hire them, and then you give them the freedom to express their ideas, it makes them happy, and good things happen. We've done a bunch of hackathon events. We've got a lot of ideas, but it really doesn't matter if you don't launch products. And I'm happy to say we've launched a ton of ideas that have come out of our hackathon events. Last February, we launched a feature called Clip and Share. It's a new one for us. It lets you isolate any portion of an audiobook and share it with your friends on social network. In March, we launched something we call One Book, or a single book, I think it's called. And what that does is it lets any customer who owns any title share that book with their friends, and that friend can redeem the title for free. And that's basically turning our customers into our marketers, turning them into our best advocates, which they already are, but we're just enabling that process. And then last, I think 2 weeks ago, we launched our all-you-can-eat service in Italy. So I'm going to mess this up. Bravissimo alla Team Italia de Audible. That's my Italian for the day, for the year, I think. Okay, so in a world, right, where you've got 140 character limit, lots of competing services looking for your attention, drawing your attention away from what you're doing day to day, we're finding customers are listening for longer and longer periods of time. On average, our customers listen between 90 minutes and 2 hours each day. So that's kind of nuts. I mean, what's going on? So at Audible, we love data. And I can tell you in 2015, our customers listened to 1.6 billion hours of audio. 1.6 billion hours. That's, if you're from the UK, that's a milliard. It's 1,000 million. We don't use that word anymore. But a billion hours, that's crazy. If you lined up a billion hours, that's 200,000 years. And that's going back in Earth's history. That's when Homo sapiens started walking the Earth. So we've literally got content that's played as long as Homo sapiens, whatever they are, have been around. Put it another way, going back to that title, Go to Fuck to Sleep, you could play that 64 times. Every parent in the US could play that for their toddler 64 times. And it just so happens 64 is the number of times you have to put a toddler to bed before they actually fall asleep. So maybe there's a correlation there. Okay, so let's talk about our mission. The mission of Audible is to unleash the power of the spoken word. And everything I've talked about is kind of leading up to that, right? We're opening up our API, we're giving access to our catalog, we're playing on more and more devices, and we're innovating at each step. But it comes back to the customer. I love our ad campaigns because they picture our customers, they depict our customers in sort of real-life scenarios where they're listening to the audiobooks, but in their heads, they're transported to other environments. You've got the mom who's, maybe running to school with the kids, but in her head, she's on planet Mars, or she's part of a sci-fi novel. You've got the dad who might be doing his 5K jog, but in his head, he's actually part of a Civil War battlefield scene. And it really just kind of illustrates, what's going on within our customers' minds. We have an email list, and this is all going to make sense in a minute at Audible, called Great Ideas. And this is the interactive portion of this session. So take out your phones, email greatideas@audible.com, and tell them I'm doing a fantastic job up here. Really do that, please. That would be awesome. So this email list, Great Ideas, this is given to our customers if they have an idea, if they have a way to improve our service, they reach out and they send us that in an email, and we read every one. I remember about 3 years ago, a customer reached out, and she had a daughter who was terminally ill. And the daughter had gone blind, and they had moved her into the living room. She was confined to her bed. They'd moved her into the living room, and she was a customer that listened to audiobooks. They had actually canceled their Netflix and their cable subscription just to conserve funds, but they would not cancel their audiobook Audible subscription. And this customer was asking for ways to play our audio content through her TV. And that was so that the family could participate with the daughter in the stories. And that's when it hit me. You know, I talked about 100 terabytes of audio data that we've made available for streaming, 1.6 billion hours of content listened to in 2015. But none of that really matters. What matters is that 15 minutes or that 20 minutes of time and that individual customer who's literally transported out of their day-to-day, out of that difficult situation that they're in. That's when unleashing the power of the spoken word really becomes real for me. So back to my interview questions. Are we done? What's left to do? We're 20 years old. We're continuing to innovate. And folks, we're just getting started. We're innovating now at a pace and a scale that I couldn't really have imagined 4 years ago. As I mentioned, we launched on the Amazon Echo last summer. So now, literally, I don't need to use my fingers. I can just, don't have to interact with an app. I just use my voice to kick off Audible. We're using data science, machine learning, natural language processing, all of the buzzwords, Spark, Kafka, Hadoop, Oryx. The list goes on and on. We're doing amazing things, and we're hiring like crazy. You'll see our booth. You'll see a lot of T-shirts around. Please reach out and make a connection with somebody today while you're here. We're also expanding. I mentioned at the beginning, our latest office is literally within eyesight of this location. Back home in Newark, we have a new venture fund called Newark Venture Partners that's kicked off. It's in our building. It's a $50 million fund. It's just about to open its doors. So our people, our engineers, are literally going to be an elevator ride away from the next generation of startups. And you're going to hear more about that in the coming months. The last thing I'll say is our Newark campus. Our Newark campus is expanding. Part of our commitment to Newark is the urban renewal of that location. We just purchased a 200-year-old Presbyterian church next door to our headquarters. It's an amazing facility, and we're gutting it and turning it into office space. It's going to be the tech 21 Jump Street of Newark. And that's going to be done over the next 18 months. It's got a bowling alley. It's got a basketball court, the whole 9 yards. So that's it for me. As I said at the beginning, what's left to do? There's a lot left to do. And as Jeff Bezos always says, it's still day one. Thanks, everybody.